DUI, and armed robbery. And 45.4% of illegal immigrants were more likely than other criminals to have been gang members. My goodness. Here's a smattering of how just in the past week, illegals have added to the health and well-being of their communities. On Monday, in Hartford, Connecticut, where I come from, Onel Arana Gervasio, a Mexican illegal, pled guilty to being part of a heroin ring that extended to Alabama, in Connecticut, Rhode Island, Ohio, and guess what? He's a boomerang visitor. He was already deported back in 2013. Then there's this charmer, Salvador Gomez Lopez of Montgomery County, Maryland, right nearby where I'm broadcasting from. The Salvadoran illegal was urinating in public, lovely, when a bystander tried to convince him to pull up his pants and find a bathroom. Instead, Gomez pulled a box cutter out and started slashing at the poor man's throat. There's a lot of gashes there now. Last week, 3 dreamers were arrested in 3 different smuggling cases. All were DACA recipients. They were smuggling human beings. 2 were nabbed in California and 1 in Arizona. And this is a heartbreaker. 5 days ago in Rio Vista, Texas, a young mother of 2, Jennifer Smith, on her way to pick up her kids at school, was killed in a horrific car crash by illegal immigrant Candido Martinez Ramirez, 32 years old. He was drunk. And this past Sunday, many of you have heard, Indiana Colts linebacker Edwin Jackson and his Uber driver were killed by an illegal, intoxicated alien. 37-year-old Manuel Orrego Salvala, the DOJ announcing in just the last hour that they will bring federal charges against the Guatemalan, proving once again that Jeff Sessions, his attorney general, and his DOJ are moving quickly to right the wrongs of the past when it comes to illegal crime going unpunished. No more. Sessions is right. This has to stop. Look at these cases. This is just a few. It's just the last week. We could do a whole show on this. When you really start to think about it, it's total insanity. We have enough problems in our country with drugs, the opioid epidemic, alcohol, criminal activity. We sure do not need any more. And yes, of course, all illegal immigrants are not criminals. But frankly, that's not the point. Because that's of little comfort to Jennifer Smith's sons or Edwin Jackson's mother or the thousands of Americans whose names you do not know, whose lives will never be the same again because our government was unwilling or unable to enforce our laws. And that's the angle. We have with us tonight someone who has suffered terribly because of illegal immigrant crime. Sergeant Brandon Mendoza was a 13-year veteran of the Mesa Police Department in Arizona. On May 12, 2014, he was hit head-on and killed by a drunk driver heading the wrong way on a freeway. The driver had been in the country illegally for more than 20 years. Sergeant Mendoza's mother, Marianne, joins us now in the studio. It is great to see you. Thank you for being here. We've talked a couple of times over the years because of your testimony about your son and what he represents, his story, kind of man he was. And I'm so impressed with your poise and your dedication to continuing his memory and maybe help us learn something here. You heard what I said in the monologue. What is your reaction?
I'm very disappointed in the senators, that represent Arizona to begin with. They've had this type of information readily available, and they choose to ignore it, and they choose to act like Arizona does not have a problem, and we have a huge problem. And I'm thank you so much for bringing attention to so many of the deaths that have happened in the last couple weeks. This happens so much. More people are killed yearly by illegal aliens in the United States than were killed on 9/11. And this is what people don't understand. It's a slow, methodical, continual thing all year long.
And when you think about the critics of President Trump for bringing this issue to light, they say, well, you're painting with a broad brush. Not all illegal immigrants commit these types of crime. They're people just coming here to have a better life. What do you say?
That's true. But, a lot of these people who killed our children came here for a better life, and something happened. And the politicians in Washington right now, they're the very ones who are giving this monster a voice and letting these illegals think that they have a right to demand what they're demanding from our politicians. They have no place in American politics, none.
And does it elicit a strong reaction from you? I imagine it does, when you see the American media so heavily invested in covering the stories of illegal immigrants who fear deportation. I mean, almost every day. I mean, on radio, we call them immigration sob stories. Yet your story, the stories of so many other mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters like you, without President Trump and maybe talk radio, maybe Fox, I don't know where they get a voice.
We don't, and that's the unfortunate thing, because the liberal media and most publications in the United States only publish those type of stories. It tries to evoke, you know, sympathy to fit their agenda.
Do you not deserve sympathy?
Absolutely, 100%. I'm more angry now than wanting sympathy, because I feel for my fellow Americans who are in the future are going to be affected by illegal alien crime. And that's what each and every one of us at AVAC stand up for. That's why we're fighting the fight we fight. We don't want this to happen to another family. And you know, I put a message out to the politicians, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. Which child of yours would you look in the eye and decide that they're the ones who you give up to an illegal alien criminal to support the agenda that you're supporting?
I mean, it sounds harsh to say that, but it does seem
that's what they had us do.
They are willing to say, well, this is just going to be the price that we have to pay.
Collateral damage.
In order to be a welcoming, open country, the Statue of Liberty, bringing you tired, you're poor. I mean, it's almost like that's where we are, because they turn their head away from your story.
Right.
And so many others like you. And Arizona, this is what drives me crazy. John McCain, God bless him, I know he's suffering with cancer and it's a horrible thing. But John McCain is coming back for another bite at the apple, pushing this huge amnesty, no border wall.
Right.
No end to chain migration. I don't think real change the visa lottery that it's significant. Jeff Flake, who's very unpopular in your state, he's retiring because he's so unpopular. Another big pro-illegal immigrant senator. And yet Arizona is ground zero for illegal immigration. I don't understand. And so many people I meet say, how are these guys representing us? How are they representing? I mean, it's stunning to me. It's
a lasting impression that Jeff Flake's going to give, you know, the type of legislation that he's going for. And unfortunately, the same with John McCain. But the thing is, this has been a problem for 20 or 30 years in Washington. The immigration problem cannot be fixed. The illegal alien problem cannot be fixed until they start at the beginning and get rid of the criminals, secure our borders. They come back over repeatedly. You can't fix DACA and Dreamers without having a hand on what's happening with all the criminals in our country. You have to get rid of them, and you have to protect Americans. We need to come first.
Marianne, thank you so much for joining us. And we will not forget your son, Brandon. Thank you so much. And the man who compiled the most comprehensive look at illegal immigrants and crime has come under fire by open border advocates. Here to defend his study is John Lott of the Crime Prevention Research Center, along with immigration attorney Alan Orr. Professor Lott, let's start with you, because you've been doing a lot of research over the years about different topics, guns and violent crime, and now you focused on Arizona. And you heard Marianne Mendoza, who will always be a grieving mother, who's turning her sadness into righteous anger, impatient for results. But your study looked at 33 years of statistics. Tell me about your methodology, because it's coming under assault.
Right. Well, there have been a lot of studies that have been done on illegal immigrants and crime. The problem has been the data with those have relied either on survey data, which is pretty problematic if you're going to be asking somebody whether they're here illegally and whether they have a past criminal history, or they've mixed together pretty much completely both legal and illegal immigrants. And I believe the data for Arizona shows that illegal immigrants are much more likely to commit crime, but legal immigrants tend to be very law-abiding. And if you mix the two together, you're going to miss a lot of that difference. The nice thing about Arizona's data is that they've done by far the best job that I've seen in terms of separating out those different groups. And what you find is that, as you mentioned, that they're much more likely to commit crime.
I find to be outrageous.
About 12% of the state prison population, where illegal immigrants make up about 4.8% of the state population. That's particularly imbalanced when you look at young criminals. Those under 35, illegal immigrants make up about 8% of the prison population, but only 2% of the state population.
All right, let's go to Alan. Alan, you have concerns about this study. We'll put up the graphic in a moment. But you find it to be...
I can't hear anything, guys.
I lost the signal here.
Well, I think we might be having an issue with this. But let's put up the full graphic of what we learned from John Lott's study, because I think the Fox viewers need to see this. Here it is. 142% more likely to be convicted of a crime, illegal immigrants in Arizona. They tend to commit more serious crimes. They serve 10.5% longer sentences, more likely to be classified as dangerous, 45% more likely to be gang members than U.S. citizens. Marianne, we're going to try to get our sound back on our guests, but I don't find this surprising at all. And John Lott's getting hammered out there because he looked at the data and he came up with a way of analyzing it to try to separate out green card holders who are legally here and illegal immigrants. And my question, and you must have some thoughts on this, how is this not already readily available? Why do we need a professor of economics to have to go into the database for 33 years in Arizona? Why don't we know these facts?
Well, and
it's like they're being purposely kept from the American people. This drives me crazy. I'm always trying to find out the status of these people committing crimes. Like, oh, we can't report that. What?
We have somebody in Oregon who is able to get us those kind of statistics, too. And this was the first report from any other state than Oregon that was able to do this. And we thank them.
Yeah, it's about time. I think we have Professor Lott and Alan back with us. Alan, let's go to you. You have some concerns about John Lott's study. And by the way, John, I thought you were just talking over me earlier. I'm like, God, he doesn't even hear what I'm saying. So forgive the audio. This is live TV. Alan, let's talk to you about the methodology without getting too wonky. He paints a picture of illegal immigrants more likely to commit violent crime, more likely to be incarcerated for these crimes, murder, manslaughter, first degree, second degree. Why do you dispute this?
Well, it's easily disputed because the methodology just doesn't work. It's inconsistent with every other study that's been performed over the last couple of decades, as well as data from the American Immigration Association, as well as the Immigration Council, which shows that immigrants actually do less crime.
And
the types of crimes.
Immigration, though, right?
Well,
those groups are all pro-immigration.
Well, I don't think they're necessarily pro-immigration. They're pro-American. But also, Cato Institute has also gone out to the site for sort of saying that there's statistical data information. So, I mean, it's not...
Cato Institute? You got to be kidding me. Alan, you got to do better than Cato. Cato is notoriously open borders. I mean, they dine out on China trade and open borders, okay?
Well, we're not talking about
they're good on taxes. They're terrible on the other two issues.
We're not talking about just open borders. We're talking about actual information here. And John, there's no way for John to actually have the data to show who was an undocumented and who was a legal immigrant. His data is really skewed information from over a large time period, which just dumps Americans, naturalized citizens, as well as people who were here on a green card who were in these removal proceedings, which make the numbers hyper.
All right, John, respond quickly to that criticism, please.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of points they just brought up. What I was trying to say earlier is that there are a lot of studies that have been done, but the problem is that those studies completely mix together legal and illegal immigrants, or they do surveys. Well, in the case of Arizona, you have pre-sentencing reports that are done that determines whether or not what their citizenship status is. That's included in the data that's here. Now, you know, there may be some issues that one can say that they may have made mistakes in some cases, but even if you believe that's the case, and I doubt that, the most you're talking about is about 10% of the sample that's there. And that's very small. That's a much smaller error than any of the other data that you've been pointing to.
All right, guys, fascinating. We're going to continue to debate this, no doubt. I think we need more transparency, more reporting, more truth. And the localities, the state should have to reveal and keep a database on who is committing the crime in the United States, the American people. I think demand to know. Marianne, I know you do. And still ahead, a second bombshell memo. You're not going to believe this. This time pointing to actual coordination between that shady Oppo firm, Fusion GPS, and Obama and Clinton pals. Seriously, you cannot make this up. It gets better every night. Joe DeGeneva, Kim Strassel will be with us to talk about it up next. And Devin Nunes will be here as well. Breaking news tonight, another bombshell memo, this one released by the offices of Senator Chuck Grassley and Senator Lindsey Graham. In short, this newly unredacted document points to shocking coordination between that shady Oppo research firm, Fusion GPS, British intel operative Christopher Steele, and this is great, the Obama State Department and, dun-dun-dun, Clinton allies. Joining us now to analyze this breaking development, former U.S. Attorney Joe DeGenova and Kimberly Strassel, a member of the Wall Street Journal editorial board. Joe, you've been saying for some time there could be criminal implication here for some of these major players at the FBI. What do we know now after this new memo has been redacted, unredacted?
The Grassley-Graham memo and letter establishes beyond any doubt that the FBI knowingly deceived the FISA court about the information that it was presenting to them, lied to them about the fact that it was verified information, which it was not, which the law requires. And now we know that additional Clinton allies, including Sidney Blumenthal, were involved in the transmission of false information, unverified information, to the FBI through State Department officials. Somebody's going to have to go to prison.
Kimberly Strassel, we've been led to believe that any omission in the application for the FISA warrant was inadvertent or it was minor. There was a footnote referencing political influence. But I think the FISA judge might have had a different view had we known that some of the information had come from, I don't know, Sid Blumenthal, who knows, maybe Cody Shearer, these old Clintonistas. This is wild what we learned tonight.
Well, that's obviously one of the most obnoxious parts of this is finding out that, they did not, and this memo goes to this, the Grassley memo makes far more clear exactly what the FBI told the FISA court. And we know that they did not say that it was the Hillary Clinton campaign, the DNC. We now know the language. In fact, it was told that it was a law firm that was connected and had political motivations, which, of course, is the most anodyne thing you could tell the court and was clearly deliberately done in order to keep the dossier's credibility. But I think the other part is what the FBI told the court, which turns out not to be true, which is they submit the dossier and this Yahoo News article as the basis of their investigation, and they say that one corroborates the other, and then they specifically tell the court that they do not believe Michael Steele is behind that Yahoo article. Well, we knew he was, and you have to assume that if they knew anything about what they were doing, had even the slightest investigative chops, they would know he did it as well, too. So that's a question that needs to be asked of the FBI.
Yeah, they all have to come back in for questioning, every single one of them. I want to put up a full screen of what's in this memo. This is a key part, and Joe, I'd like you to respond. And it relates to how they got this information. Okay, there is substantial evidence suggesting that Mr. Steele materially misled the FBI about a key aspect of his dossier efforts, one which bears on his credibility. Before that, then it says it's troubling enough that the Clinton campaign funded Mr. Steele's work, but that these Clinton associates were contemporaneously feeding Mr. Steele allegations raises additional concerns about his credibility. And you filed this FISA application with the court, Joe, and you know that Christopher Steele has been talking to the press, which they knew in the subsequent applications. Yet they never told the court, we've learned this, that he is unreliable, we've terminated our relationship with him. What does that mean for a lawyer to okay an application and to sign off on an application, knowing that this guy, Steele, was really problematic?
There is now no doubt whatsoever that the lawyers at the FBI and the lawyers at the Justice Department deceived the FISA court knowingly. They had every reason in the world to believe that the information being provided was not only biased, but completely unreliable. They didn't care. They wanted the wiretaps, the intercepts, and the electronic surveillance because this was part of a plan. And the plan was to exonerate Hillary Clinton, and if she lost the election, to frame Donald Trump and his associates with a false crime. And they almost succeeded. And if she had won, they would have succeeded.
Oh my gosh, but this went up to June of 2017.
That is correct.
The surveillance of Carter Page goes up to 20.
It is remarkable. This is McCabe.
This is outrageous.
McCabe ruled the FBI functionally with an iron fist. And if you crossed him, you know what happened? Your career was over. And it was known inside the Bureau. By the way, everybody keeps saying, how come nobody in the FBI or the DOJ stood up? Interestingly, all the lawyers kept their mouths shut.
They're all afraid of McCabe.
The one person who spoke up was a military man, Admiral Mike Rogers. He's the hero in this story. But McCabe and all these people knowingly lied to the FISA court.
Kimberly, Jeff Sessions today said that, is going to have a fresh start at the FBI. Is it a little late for a fresh start? I mean, this is really bad. But, it's nice. But, what's next, essentially?
Well, look, I think one of the problems here, and I'm not suggesting a firing or anything, but I think that there was a mistake maybe made when the Trump team decided to name, Christopher Wray as the new FBI director. Because when you have a level of mess this large, the only way you get a fresh start is to have someone come in from outside that whole realm with a new set of eyes and just get rid of clean house. And, the thing is Christopher Wray was not part of this. I want to make it clear, and I think he is making some changes. Look, he's moved or fired or got rid of a whole bunch of the people that were surrounding Comey. McCabe, the chief of staff, Rubicki, the general counsel, Baker. But, it brings up the question, as someone who spent so many years around the Justice Department and involved in this realm, is that the kind of outsider you need to really, start things over?
Someone's got to pay for what happened here. Carter Page has been completely, in my view, unfairly dragged through the mud, surveilled. They read his email going back as long as they want to. This is lovely. But, so he's been put through the ringer just to get at Trump, and they falsified this information. This stuff was phony baloney that went to the FISA court. They knew this guy was a complete fraud, and they went with it anyway. That's as simple as it gets. Joe and Kimberly, such a great segment. Great insight tonight. And we're not done, though, with this breaking news. We're going to talk to the man at the center of the storm, House Intel Committee Chairman Devin Nunes will be here live. Don't move. Continued reaction on the breaking news revealed in that Graham Grassley memo released tonight. Let's go right to the man in the middle of this storm, House Intel Committee Chair Devin Nunes. Congressman, your reaction to what we saw tonight?
It is a vindication of what we've been dealing with for the last 5 days, where we have been scolded that the dossier really played no part at all in the FISA application. So clearly that's not the case. As people are beginning to find out. And, sadly, the mainstream media continues to ignore this. Even tonight I was looking, no one's covering this.
Well, it's amazing that the Democrats, who were so hot on exposing corruption in law enforcement all across this country, now it's like the FBI can do no wrong. As long as the ultimate goal is the removal of Donald Trump, you can never question them. If you do question them, you're the bad guy. What has it been like for you personally to be at the center of this? Because you've been in this meat grinder in the media. I'm kind of used to it, but you really got thrown into it as the House Intel Committee Chair.
Well, the good thing is that knowing what happened earlier last year when we exposed the unmaskings that had occurred and watching how they operated during that time period, I knew as we kept building up to this, by all the same people who were attacking me, that we had the story nailed, that we were 100% right. And so it made it easy. So, I said the other night that it's actually enjoyable because you just know that you've got the story.
I always like it when the critics come after you. I always wear it as a badge of honor, especially certain critics like this. Watch.
Is it possible that the Republican chairman of the House Intel Committee has been compromised by the Russians? Is it possible that they actually have a Russian agent running the House Intel Committee on the Republican side?
I hope that's not the case, and I certainly have no information to suggest that it is. I think that
doesn't his behavior speak of that, though? I mean, I'm not the first person who's raised this.
Mark Halperin's former writing buddy. So what about these outrageous allegations? Because you're getting hotter and hotter and hotter to the truth. You're getting closer and closer and closer.
Right.
And they're turning up the heat on you as you're getting closer to the truth about what happened in this
and it's scary that people actually would watch that and then believe it. right? I mean, we've been Republicans for a long time, especially on the House Intelligence Committee. We were begging the Obama administration to do something about the Russia problem, and they ignored us. I even said it was the largest intelligence failure since 9/11, our failure to understand Putin. And yet the mainstream media doesn't care. You would think they would actually call out some of these guys who say this stuff, but they don't. The facts don't get in the way, because I just think they do not want this president to be successful, and they don't want Republicans to be successful, and they have one goal in mind, and that is power. They just want Republicans removed from the House of Representatives.
By any means necessary?
By any means. I mean, look what they did. I mean, it really appears like with political dirt being moved from a campaign, being developed and paid for by a campaign, funneled right into the FBI to open up an investigation into the other campaign, into the Trump campaign, and then to spy on someone is something I would never have imagined. This is where I knew about a year ago, well, about last March time frame, that the dossier was used in some form or fashion. But even at that time, I thought to myself, really,
has to be a minor thing.
Couldn't have been that crazy, and it ends up they were really that crazy.
What about bringing back Comey, McCabe, perhaps members of the State Department, what we learned tonight, and their involvement in filing for this FISA application, knowing what they knew about Christopher Steele, even in the subsequent applications? He was unreliable. He had basically admitted as such that he was getting subsourced information, including from throughout the process through Clinton associates. Are you going to bring people back?
Yeah. So phase one of the investigation was FISA abuse. Okay, and we closed that out in terms of what we think members needed to know. We're moving on to the State Department and irregularities there. The next phase will be looking at all the cast of characters and then conducting those interviews.
State Department thus far, what can you tell us?
I can just tell you that the State Department was gathering information and then passing it to very strange places that should not have happened.
The Obama State Department.
The Obama State Department. I will just say that there were comments over the weekend from people within the State Department that said John Kerry had been briefed on the dossier, that they had provided the new dossier, whatever this new dossier is, and they had provided it also to the FBI. So by people starting to talk about it, it seems to me like some people may be trying to distance themselves from the rest of the cast of characters.
Sidney Blumenthal, longtime Clinton confidant, he was trying to push Hillary in emails to, policy to dump Gaddafi. He had a lot of stuff going on in Libya himself. Cody Shearer, who is a longtime Clinton, hack, who goes way back to the mid-'90s when I was, covering all this stuff back then. There's a sense that those two were involved in putting information out there that got in the hands of Christopher Steele. Can you tell us anything about that?
Well, I will have to tell you that we've read a lot of the stories, but you'll have to wait until we decide how we're going to proceed with the investigation. I mean, there's several people involved.
Adam Schiff got punked. I think we have the call. I want to play it.
She got compromising materials on Trump after their short relations.
Okay. And what's the nature of the compromise?
Well, there were pictures of naked Trump.
Okay. And so Putin was made aware of the availability of the compromising material?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We will be back in touch with you through our staff to make arrangements to obtain these materials for our committee and for the FBI, and I appreciate you reaching out to us.
Congressman, it is not a good accent, Russian accent. I've lived there. It's not it's a bad accent. This is really funny. But
well, look, I think it's pretty clear now. You have the Clinton campaign who was getting information from the Russians, dirt on Trump, and now you know that the House Intelligence Committee Democrats were getting dirt or attempting to get dirt from Russians on Trump.
Well, he's like taking a random phone call of someone, like, hey, whatever it got, bring it to me.
Well, yeah, I can remember that way back, many of the Democrats on the committee have said that they have more than circumstantial evidence that there was collusion between Trump and the Russians. Maybe that was it.
Oh. You're very funny. Very funny. Who said Devin Nunes is not funny? He's a straight man, though. He delivers it straight. Thanks for being with us. It's always great to see you.
Thank you.
And by the way, dangerous illegal immigrant crime. We talked about at the top of the show. Crime rings are now popping up in major cities across the United States. Again, a lot of people won't tell you about these stories. I will. Up next. Last month, The Angle was first to report that a heroin ring busted in Denver was run by illegal immigrants. We promised we'd stay on the issue, and now we've learned that this dangerous scourge has hit Cincinnati. At least half of the suspects apprehended in a major drug bust are reportedly in the country illegally. Joining us now from Cincinnati with details on the case is Butler County Sheriff Richard Jones. Sheriff Jones, this is a wild story. Heroin popping up all across the United States, a lot of it now coming in from Mexico, being sold by illegal immigrants. Tell us what you know.
Basically, this is about the fourth big bust that we had. They had thousands of hits of heroin, cocaine, guns. Half of the suspects are illegals. They've been here illegally. The other ones are on the loose. A couple of them are on the loose. Thousands of dollars. And this is just one of four. We had a guy from the Ukraine the other day, had 120 guns in his house, 10 guns in his car, and he was legally in this country. But then we had 4 others that were arrested, the same thing, guns, drugs, and from Mexico. And we're the 8th largest county in Ohio. We're not the largest, but we're the 8th largest. And we're in a major hub, and it's destroying our community. We have over 200 are going to die this year with heroin overdoses. We've had babies born in our jail. The last one was born in the toilet, all addicted to heroin that's coming from Mexico. And it's destroying us. While the government fights in D.C. over the issues you were talking about earlier, they don't give us the resources we need. We wish the Congress, the Democrats and the Republicans would get together and come down here and help us in law enforcement. We need their help. We need their support. We don't need this bickering. If they think the people in our communities care about their bickering and fighting, we care about our taxes, we care about our health care, and we care about safety. And when you have someone from another country that has over 120 guns in their house in one county and the guns, one of them was a silencer. They had better quality guns than what our law enforcement has.
So that guy was Ukrainian?
Rifles.
That guy was Ukrainian?
Yes, Ukrainian. Yes, born in the Ukraine. And this is just one of many. And you wonder why Ohio, we're on a major highway. We've had MS-13, and people that think they're not here, they're fools. They're here, but we need help from our government. We need our government to come in and do some workplace enforcement. We need to send a message.
Sheriff, who except Trump has really made this issue as big as it is front and center? I mean, if it weren't for President Trump,
no one
I don't
else
know who else would.
We'd have nothing. We have a real poor governor here, Governor Kasich, who encourages all these people to come into the state of Ohio. He calls it an act of love.
We're out of time, but we're going to have you back. Fantastic segment. So awesome. Up next, Reagan's birthday. President Ronald Reagan was born on this day in 1911 in the town of Tampico, Illinois. It was my great honor and privilege to serve in his administration. Reagan was known as a great communicator, but he didn't just spout words. His words literally changed the world. He labeled the Soviet Union the evil empire, and against the advice of his staff, he told the Soviet General Secretary, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. He was certain that given a push, the whole communist edifice would crumble beneath its own weight. At every turn, though, of course, most of the media thought Reagan had lost his mind, he was a warmonger. But the Gipper held fast to his principles, and he fearlessly pressed forward. The Berlin Wall fell, and so did the Soviet Empire. And Reagan did it all without firing a single shot. It was peace through strength in the end. But for all his achievements, Reagan never lost his amiable wit.
Mr. President, in talking about the continuing recession tonight, you have blamed mistakes of the past, and you have blamed the Congress. Does any of the blame belong to you?
Yes, because for many years I was a Democrat.
I remember like it was yesterday, the day I ended my service at the White House. I was heading off to law school in the Oval Office. A few of us were meeting with President Reagan. He shook my hand and offered just a little bit of advice. He said, make it matter. Boy, did the Gipper make it matter. Perhaps Reagan's greatest accomplishment was restoring pride, hope, and faith in America. We'll never forget Ronald Reagan, not only for what he did, but for who he showed us we could be. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Catch me on the radio tomorrow morning. Another big news night. We'll be sure to cover it all tomorrow. New information on the new memo from Senators Grassley and Graham. And one writer, by the way, called it Nunez's memo on steroids. I should have told Devin that. I should have said, well, your memo was kind of This one, no. Tweet me your thoughts at Ingraham Angle. And Shannon Bream and the Fox News at Night team is here to take it away. Shannon.